Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Inlay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Askari, and our guest is Self-Governed. How are you doing?
Doing great. How are you, Payman?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited. You and I have had some back and forth, and I really value your insight. And I begged you to come on, and you're going to explain a couple of things to me about what's going on and what the U.S. is really up to.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I do appreciate our back and forth. You're very patient with me. I think I probably pushed some buttons, but you continue to follow me and you continue to engage. So it's great. And I really like what you're doing with your interviews, how you're bringing the PPC candidates on and everything. So I think you're doing great work as far as um, getting some different voices out there in Canada, which there aren't a lot that are doing that.
Yeah, and I think today we're going to get one of those, one of the really smart voices out there today. So I guess without further ado, we can head over to your article.
Sure. Yeah. Pop it up. You want to put up on the screen?
Yeah, and I got the wrong one, but bear with me. This one.
Got a few tabs up.
Just a few. So why don't you walk us through what your sort of analysis is of what the U.S. is doing?
Sure. I called the article the New Trump World Order, kind of a play on the old New World Order, which is essentially the plan for the U.S. to be more of an empire, take have more influence throughout the world after World War II. So I think the first quote that I have there, which is Marco Rubio, which is very, very interesting. Because Marco Rubio, he's not he. I don't really know where he stands, but he certainly stands some good things now. But his point here is that we're moving into a multipolar world with great powers in different parts of the world. So there's been a theme that's been going on. There's a unipolar world, which is essentially the U.S. empire managing the world, controlling has the reserve currency, has the military all over the world. Now, what's been coming out from Russia, China, a lot of these other countries is they want to go to a multipolar world. So there's multi-powers. There isn't one power that's able to control. The rest of the world can't sanction. There's not going to go in and regime change countries if it's not going on with the plan. So it's very interesting. Marco Rubio kind of moving that way. So I believe that they are attempting to move out from being this empire and pull into something more like the old Monroe Doctrine, where they're just going to look after kind of the Western Hemisphere. So right now we're seeing that they're trying to rein in Canada, Mexico, Central America, and probably South America in the end. So this is essentially them saying that we're ending the empire and it's us doing it because that system wasn't going to go on forever. It was already starting to kind of collapse down. You can't spread out that far for that long. Because what happens is you end up pulling everything out of your country. So you pull all the manufacturing out and the country kind of starts to fall apart because you have to spend a lot of money to do this, to have this influence, to have this control in the rest of the world. So I believe that's what they're doing generally. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to do this. There's a lot of opposition. We're seeing right now, which is quite popular, the fact that they're pulling a USAID. That USAID was the biggest. It was their network. It was the way that they were funding all these organizations, politicians, media, all over the world to kind of push their message, stop anyone who is questioning it. So the fact that they're going through that and kind of pulling that out is a good sign. I think it's the biggest piece they need to pull out. So we have so Greenland, Canada as a 51st state, Panama and Mexico. Well, we can kind of go through those. To start, I think Greenland's easier. I think Greenland is just there's some resources there, but I think mostly it's military. There's a new Arctic kind of sea route that's going above there, kind of over top of Canada, and it'll go by Alaska. And I think that's going to be a very important trade route. So I think really Greenland is that. Maybe some military bases as far as kind of watching north and east for Russia, China, or other countries. So I think the Greenland thing, I think they're really going to do it. I think it makes sense. So you're highlighting this.
Oh, I'm highlighting
Sure.
things that you said.
Yeah. And you'll see them start pulling out. So I had the next slide. You'll see them start pulling out a lot of these organizations. They're pulling out of the WHO. They're ending a lot of the UN, well, the UN human rights and the UNRWA. I think you're going to see other ones. I wouldn't be that surprised if they pull out the WTO. I think because China right now is attempting to take a lot of these tariffs to the World Trade Organization, and I think they're just going to go, maybe we'll just leave that as well. Because all those systems were empire systems. They were trying to control, so the WHO health policy through the world. The Human Rights Council wasn't really doing much, especially with what was happening kind of in the Middle East. They'd have all these countries voting a certain way, but nothing ever happened with it. I think that whole thing kind of just was vetoed to being not important anymore. So
I'm letting you talk. I'm
I know
assuming
I'm
you're
just
comfortable. If you want me to jump in, I'm happy to.
no. I'm just reading it. It's really small on the screen here. So I've been listening to a lot of people, probably a year and a half, and they've been talking about what this Trump plan was. Now it's funny because a lot of them are anonymous accounts. I have no idea who they are. They can say they do these things, but you really just have to listen to them for a bit and kind of see how correct they've been. So it went from them talking about this old policy, this policy back when there's protectionist tariffs, there was no income tax, just a little bit of a different economic system. And they were talking about it. It sounded good. It made sense. But again, I didn't know who they were. It was anonymous people speaking to anonymous people on podcasts. But then it started to move into the presidential campaign. Trump, he was talking about no income tax. He was talking about tariffs. Now, Trump had previously talked about tariffs a little bit, so it wasn't that new for him to bring that part up. But I think they're going to use these tariffs as two things. They're going to use it to fund government, but mostly probably control. And that's kind of what you're seeing with Canada and Mexico. It'll be, if you don't follow these plans, we're going to put the tariffs up. They'll also plan on reshoring, so bringing as much manufacturing back to the US as possible. And these tariffs can fund some of that. They'll help with it. There'll be tax incentives for reshoring and bringing everything back on or back to the US. Right. So yes. So it'll be So it's. Sorry, I'm just reading what we have here. Oh yeah. Income tax. So the first part is the tariffs to control fund. As far as the income tax component of it, I think they're really going to do that because it's going to be inflationary. If you're reading, no matter how they do this, it's still going to cost more if they bring something and they make it in the US, no matter what kind of automation they have, what kind of tech they can use to use less workers or something like that. It's still going to be inflationary. So they're going to have to do something. And I think they're going to remove income tax to kind of help out with some of those costs. And the third part will be energy. You have to reduce energy costs as much as possible, because that's one of the biggest, beyond kind of monetary policy. It really, when oil and energy costs are very high, it's hard to, it's going to make all the products, all the goods more expensive.
Can I get you to, I really like these two paragraphs. Can you comment on these? How they don't want Mexico because they're too young, labor costs are low, as opposed to Canada.
Sure. We'll go to the two of them. So the whole tariffs, the fighting, what I believe, the whole thing between Mexico and Canada, they're using the same tariff idea. They're saying that words. They're going to use border because they can't really put these tariffs on, because I think they'll lose in court because there is trade agreements with all that's already set up. So if they just say it's because of some trade imbalance, I think they're going to lose, which is why they're saying it's national security. There's people coming across the border. It's a health security or emergency because it's fentanyl and drugs that are coming through. So that's why the core of it's going to be that language. Now I don't know how much is really coming from Canada down. Mexico, I do believe there definitely are people coming up and drugs and that kind of stuff coming up from Mexico. But I think the border thing is more of a cover for the security. But Mexico, they're not going to be able to make everything in this plan. If they bring over manufacturing, not everything will be made in the U.S. They're going to want to use Mexico because Mexico has a fairly low per hour labor rate. Now, the last number I saw was about 42, but that was from 2022. It may be a little bit higher, but that's under China and just over Vietnam. So it's a low cost labor rate, but Mexico has a lot of people and they're a young population. And I don't think you're going to want to take over Mexico. You wouldn't want to make Mexico a state or anything like that. It's a risk with all those people there. There's a lot of problems in Mexico. I mentioned water. Like some of their major cities have major water problems. They may run out of water, and Mexico City has close to 35 million people. I think it's going to be a problem if something like that happens. So I think they want to use Mexico for labor for some of the manufacturing, but they definitely don't want to take it over. Now Canada, I think, is a different story because Canada's population, it's whatever. We'll see. We'll say 40 million. Who knows what it actually is? We'll see what happens when if people get sent home. But let's just say 40 million. They're not going to manufacture in Canada. They can't get labor rates down anywhere close to something that makes sense. It makes more sense to go to the U.S. So they're not going to. They don't want Canada for any kind of manufacturing. But what they need, and as I mentioned, to keep costs down, they need energy low. So they need energy, and they need some of the resources, minerals, uranium. Because they're going to be moving into nuclear pretty heavily, I believe. So they're going to need uranium. So Canada's not going to be manufacturing, but it will. But they need these resources. So when he said the 51st state, I don't believe he was talking about all of Canada. I don't think it would make sense to go after all of Canada. I don't think they want to deal with Quebec. Quebec is, it is a very unique nation, and they're trying to go back to that even further. So I don't think they want to that kind of a hassle. Ontario, I don't think so either, and the Maritimes, I don't think that's
Why not?
considered.
Why not Ontario?
Maybe a little bit for some of the minerals, but that's a lot of people still, right? So now you got to deal with the 12 to 13 million people. That's kind of where the head of the Canadian government is. I think there's gonna be more resistance there. They may, but I just how I'm looking at it, I think that would be too difficult. I think maybe if they were able to, and I'm not saying I want this to happen, but I think this is what they may be thinking. If they were able to, pull Alberta out, or maybe like Alberta and Saskatchewan or something like that, I think Canada's going to be in a tough position economically. I think it'd be very, very difficult, and who knows what happens after that point. They may just have to wait if they did that.
Let me ask you another question before you move on. Do you know Max Fawcett?
Yes. Yeah.
So whatever you and I may think of him, he's very critical of Alberta, and he's pushing this narrative that Alberta's not really that important for Canada. How important is Alberta for Canada?
Well, I think it's very important. I think energy, oil, that for any nation, whether if you want to be some kind of industrialized nation, you want to have any kind of military, you need to have that. You need to have access to that. It does everything. So oil is not just, it's not going to be selling for gasoline and this kind of stuff. Oil is used for everything. It's used for every product we have throughout your house. So if you just, I'm just watching how much they freak out every time Alberta tries to say they want to leave or do something like this, and you get the Max Fawcett's and you get all these people. They have to work very hard to tell you that this is not important. And I just find that interesting, how hard they have to work to say, oh, it's no big deal. They're not that important. They could leave. But Max is a special case. He's I don't know who's paying him. He's been on kind of this anti oil and gas thing for a long time. As long as I've met him, known him for a very, very long time. So it's hard to take his opinion seriously, but I don't know exactly what it would be. I don't know if it would pull everything out. I know our demographics in Alberta and what we contribute to CPP or contribute to taxes. If you just took out the equalization, if tomorrow Quebec wasn't getting the 22 billion and Ontario wasn't getting these, I wonder what would happen really quick. Like I just think it would. I don't think they could adjust quick enough with their economy to pay for their services, right? Because like that amount of money that goes to Quebec, if it went away, you know, in a year from now, I think they're going to be in a tough spot. So I don't know. It's a guess on my part. If Alberta went away, they'd be in a tough spot, but I don't think there's going to be like Ontario. There's a lot of manufacturing there. I don't know if there's much of a future in manufacturing there, especially if the U.S. decides they're taking it on themselves. Trump has said that. I don't know how serious he is with it, but they've been talking about reshoring and pulling this in for 10 years. And now it looks like they're starting to do it.
Sorry,
But
when you say 10 years, you're literally talking about the Trump administration 2016 or
yeah,
even the
maybe
Obama era.
even Obama era. Yeah, maybe even earlier than that.
Okay.
Um, so just I guess back to the 51st state, Alberta. I believe they're speaking more in that direction, whether it's Alberta, Saskatchewan. I don't know about BC. I think they would, but Vancouver area and that are difficult, probably politically. But as far as Alberta and Saskatchewan go, I think culturally it wouldn't be that difficult. We're just probably more in the same mindset as Americans. Not as much, but definitely more than Eastern Canada. And then I guess next point, I don't believe this pause. I think this border deal is. We'll have to see where it goes, but the whole 1.3 billion and having the helicopters and the drones on the border that was old. That got put forth sometime in December, and Trump just ignored it. Kind of moved past it. That came out, and he immediately moved afterwards to the trade imbalance. So it's funny to watch him go, no, it's actually the actual problem is it's trade imbalance, which is a little bit of a playing with numbers. I know it's certainly mostly the energy part of it, but he moved quickly to it. But what happened with this newest deal, the pause, the reason why there is a pause is the fact that they're allowing this kind of joint task force to kind of come in. So they're essentially going to let some American task force come in and just take a look around. I guess I don't know what they're looking for. I don't know who they're looking at, but that I think is the only thing that Trump is allowing right now that will kind of give this a little bit of an extension. And I also think like this is a big thing to do if they actually do go forward with these tariffs. There's a lot of reconfigurations going to have to happen throughout the U.S. It gives them time to kind of get more ready for it. But I don't believe he's calling it a pause. I listen to his language carefully because he uses certain words on purpose. I think it is just a pause, and I think they're going to put it in. It might not be 25. Like they might do kind of a ratchet system where they start, I don't know, 10, and then we'll put it up. Maybe we'll put it down depending on if you do X, Y, and Z. Kind of going back to my point where they'll use tariffs as a kind of a means of control, kind of get what they want within their area.
How much is
Uh,
this is because of China and fentanyl, and he wants to investigate what's going on, the Chinese influence in BC?
I don't know. I think there could be something to that. I don't know I don't know who's doing this fentanyl. We get told it's China. I get told from all these people it's this, but no one can show me that. I hear a lot of language of it. I know who has a history of putting opiates into a country to try to destabilize them, and that's the English, and they've done that. So I don't know if it's China. It might be, but I think they may want to look into it. I do believe there's China's influence in Vancouver for sure. There's definitely. I don't know if it's more than just real estate or moving money from mainland China, putting it through other countries. I don't know, but I'm not completely sold that it's China that's um, moving the fentanyl in. It's been interesting watching I guess, last 8 months. like all the arrests, the last names have been very similar. In some cases, the exact
Calisthenics.
same last name. I don't know how. Well, the population isn't very big, but all of these arrests have been a Singh or very similar to a Singh. They own a lot of the transportation, so I don't know. So I have a question. I'd like to find out who's doing that, but I'm not sold as China. Um, I get a reason why there's going to be a big campaign to say it is China. China is definitely a big adversary to the U.S. right now, but I guess we'll find out. And I think there is something. I think the task force does want to look into that area, um, just to see what kind of influence there's been, because the whole the Chinese police stations and all that. Um, I probably find it, but there was it came from this article. It's this NGO. It's just China, anti-China kind of NGO group. There's two people that wrote the whole article, and that group, those two people, quickly moved when the Ukraine Russia started. Quickly moved into creating all this anti-Russian propaganda. I call it propaganda, but all these reports, case studies, they quickly moved into that, and then they moved into the other war. So those two people who created that definitely work. They work. They're probably paid by USAID. That's my guess. I guess their funding may be ending if they're still around. But it's the same people. So that's where the report came from that group. And that group has tons of questions. So I don't know. I wasn't really sold on those police stations. I don't know if China is the one that's bringing this in. I do know that they were gearing up for war with China. They need that. They want to do that. So whenever I hear that, I kind of go, we'll see. I haven't seen any strong evidence. I've listened to Sam Cooper. I've read his book. So I
I was
do
going to ask you
believe.
about that. Is Sam
Yeah,
Cooper just like, did he just waste the last 3 years of his life or whatever?
I don't know. I read his. I haven't read the updated version of it, but um, the problem with like some of these groups, whether it's the triads or this, I don't know who runs these people either, because it's pretty common. The U.S. had a lot of these terrorist groups, and it was funded by them. The British have some. I think the British have a lot within Hong Kong, and maybe they're connected more to the triads than China is. But the problem with Sam is I think I've seen him kind of get caught out on a lot of the stuff he says multiple times. I don't know if this is his thing. Like his thing is China. He wrote the book, and then he's getting out there with this. So I don't know if maybe he only sees one problem and he's not looking at more than that. But he definitely caught that they were moving money in. Like I'm not disputing that they were doing that. They were trying to buy up a lot of real estate, but lots of people were. Like if you looked into what like Saudi Arabia was doing, like BC had almost like it was an open season, and these governments wanted it to happen because these like all these municipal governments, they get paid by property taxes. They were happy with this thing going up, and they weren't looking into any of this stuff, and all the no checks as far as who was buying these properties. So who knows? It could have been all illegal. It could have been just the system was ripe for the taking, and all the governments are like, this is beneficial to us. So I don't know. I don't know how much is nefarious and how much is just people taking advantage of a weak system to try to get money out of a place where they don't want it stuck there. I understand why people wouldn't want it stuck in China, and they want to move it out, and Vancouver's close. That community started to build. The Chinese community in Vancouver became quite large, so I get why they would be buying there, because I don't know. You probably go to Vancouver more than I do, but it's very much it's quite a Chinese city. It's most of the places I went to, so I get why they'd move in there. But we'll see. I don't know. I
Well,
don't know how much of the.
we kind of got sidetracked there. No, that's fine. I was
Yeah.
just curious about your views on China. What do we got next? What's this thing you said about the video of the Colombian president with a trans woman? I didn't see this.
You haven't seen that? It was very, very quick. And this is what I've been very I've been very surprised by this, how quickly they moved and the policies that they're putting in, and how they just basically flooded the zone. They had all of these, all the things we've been asking for. They did very, very quickly. But I found this very interesting. So they're sending people to Colombia. The Colombian president said, no, this is inhumane. We're not going to take them. So then Trump put the tariffs on, and then said we're going to kick out all your diplomats. And then within a couple hours, they're like, okay, no problem. They're sending their planes to pick up these people. But then even though they did that, there's a video that came out with the president of Colombia walking with this trans woman, holding hands and kind of hugging, and but it was instant. They had it, and the plan was to put it out, even though he, I guess, capitulated and sent his own planes. They still did it. So they obviously have, they have information on a lot of these leaders, and I think that just showed they're willing to do it. And he's a small fish, so it's easy enough just to put it out on him. But I believe they probably have a lot of this stuff ready, on all of them. It's my guess, and they're going to be willing to use it. But yeah, you can find it if you search. Just search.
I'm not going to do it right now.
No,
Going to get all sorts of porn.
Yeah, they're just walking on the street. Like, it's not a big deal. But I guess this that trans woman is a known in whatever, I can't remember what country they were in. They were in Colombia, but he's married, and I think he's a very Catholic married man. So it's a big deal there, and that government's actually a bit of a downfall since that, because it's breaking up the coalition that he had. But yeah, it's just how quick that they moved and made that happen. It was surprising. And then the second point there, so when Trump, this is like probably what, day 2, where they decided to move the military to the southern border. The fact that they did that so quickly, like that was planned. So that was probably started planning early December. So they had that planned. They rolled it out. No leaks. No one knew they were planning to do this. Yeah, that's impressive that they're doing this. And with all these EOs, they're coming out, and I guess the opposition are just shocked because it's so many. They didn't know. They had no idea, and they don't know how to respond, which is why they're getting out there doing, these arrest Elon and all the yelling in the streets, because he's hitting them exactly where he needs to hit them, and he's hitting them the money, which is the biggest thing, taking away their funding.
When you say that he's hitting them in the money, you're talking specifically U.S. aid?
So that's one. That's a very big one. But I think today the AG is freezing. What is she freezing? There's another a bigger area. I think it's another organization where they're freezing the funds for that right now. But that's how this thing works. That's how all this stuff works. That's how all these municipalities get flipped, because there's these groups that have this funding. They go in, they get these presentations, they convince these people, probably give them money. I don't know what they're doing, but that whole network needs to be defunded, and then you're fighting more of a fair fight, because if you look at some of the amounts that they're paying, it's unreal. I've been blown away by how much these groups are getting just from just USA alone.
What is the budget for USA? Do you know off the top?
They had something. I don't have it off the top of my head, but it was higher. Someone put out it was higher than some of the departments, which is surprising, but it is quite high.
The reason I ask is Canada has open grants or whatever. You can go check it out nationally, so provincially and federally. We give out $240 billion a year in grants. Now, not all of that is nefarious or BS, but that's a that is, what is that? 20? It's 25% of our national budget. Our national budget is $1 trillion. 240 billion going to grants. That doesn't seem right to me.
Well, that's how this works, right? Like that. The whole concept is you fund your friends and you defund your enemies, and that's kind of how you win at this. And that's what they've done. Like, that's what do you want to call it, the empire, the globalists, I don't know, but that's what they've done. They fund their friends, they give them great jobs, and in some cases not doing anything. I'm assuming they're just giving them money, but they'll advocate for them, they'll vote for them, they'll um, whatever but taking that money away, I think it was something that I know everyone I've listened to was the number one thing they had to do, and they look to be doing it.
Well, they did the right thing, but like, I just like to point out for the audience, this money, it's not George Soros's money. This is taxpayer money.
George
So,
Soros got a lot of money as well,
well,
tons
he did, but what I mean
from
is,
that from USAID as well.
right, but like if you and I want to make change in our community, not only do we have to, like, we pay taxes that goes to our adversary, so we're paying the opponents that beat the crap out of us, is what I mean.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. It's not a fair fight. Like you're essentially paying your opponents to attack you. And
Yes,
that's what
yes.
that's
It's
what
like punching
takeaway.
yourself in the face in a boxing match.
And it was interesting to see some of those Canadian universities. I think you had one of those posts there, but I'm not that surprised. I think it's all over the place. There's a couple accounts that are just they've created some websites where you can go and just search by name. And like what are they getting?
$5 billion total for Canadian universities.
But look at the University of British Columbia.
I'm
That's
not surprised. BC is the biggest cesspool, and sorry, BC is the biggest, like the worst province in the country, in my opinion. And the UBC has so much power. Like every doctor has to get approved by the University of British Columbia.
yeah. And that's I think that's another thing they're going to go after is the whole accreditation system, because right now it's been universities, these colleges and that, but they've been funded. They're funded to go with um, a certain ideology, certain policies. But I could see these universities being in trouble. This funding going, I think we're going to see a change in the university system, probably in the U.S. first, but me, I think
Yeah,
going to Canada.
I'm laughing, but every political party in Canada now has to campaign on bringing in more international students. It's the only way.
Well, it's pretty bad. Like my sister, she was teaching at kind of just a smaller college here, and there was a lot of international students. Like it was basically funded by international students, and they're all not going to be there next year. And she may not have a job because of it. But it's true. Like it's the amount of money they're getting from them, because I think they pay at least 3 times what what a Canadian would pay. So these universities wanted it, and they were advocating for it.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand from their perspective. It makes sense. I went to university in the UK, and to this day, I still believe the only reason they let me in with my garbage marks was because I get to pay more. And the whole thing, I'll be honest with you, it's a grift, it's a racket. Like I didn't pay the triple amount. Their government gave me a scholarship to make up for that triple amount. So at the
Huh.
end of the day, it was their taxpayer that paid it.
Well, yeah.
Which I don't know. Maybe they're doing the same thing here.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. So Mark Carney, the final boss. Yeah, I just find it interesting that he shows up at this time. 'Cause I don't even know. It's been like 3-4 years. They tried Mark Carney a while ago, or he might come in. I think this might have been just after maybe like 2022. I can't remember, but he was going to come in and do something then. Oh, Matthew
Um,
Arid.
yeah, he wrote this. This is from 2021. He wrote an article about how they wanted to bring Mark Carney in. I just came across this today. This was the date is what you're saying,
Something like that.
2021. Yeah, I'll find the
Yeah,
date. You keep going there.
they trial ballooned him coming in. He didn't test very well, I think. And they kind of just stopped with that. But with what Trump's doing right now, they know what he's doing. They know that he's attempting to pull out of this, and he's going out. The city of London is one of the headquarters for this globalist or the funding model that that's been managing the world for a very long time. and I think Canada is heavily influenced by them. But yeah, they have to bring him. I think they have to bring him in because it's going to be very difficult. There's a lot of um, it's going to be a big fight, and I think they want to make it a battleground. And I don't think they necessarily care how Canada makes out in the end, but it's close. They can um, trying to how to explain what he'll do. Um, I think he has no. I think they have no problem if they see that they're going to lose this battle. Maybe not the war, but maybe this battle. I think they have no problem destabilizing Canada to a point and making it just a real big problem. A destabilized country that's attached to your border can be very, very dangerous. So I could see him doing something like that. I signed up. I signed up to be a Liberal member, so I got some Mark Carney emails today, which is very interesting. And he's talking about breaking down the trade barriers within Canada. So I can't tell the difference between him and Pierre at this point. But it's funny that they're taking some of the PPC policies, which is what I thought they would do. I thought they're going to start going after a lot of
Okay,
those.
let's put a pin in that. Because I want to
Okay.
get there. But
Okay.
you mentioned something else. So first, the destabilization of Canada. What does that look like? Are they going to blow up pipelines? What are they going to
No, I
introduce?
know. I no, that's interesting. I don't think they would go to something like that. But if there was some kind of a financial collapse within Canada, um, I think that would be a problem because if you have that, you can get power vacuums. Who knows who can come in? They could probably do some. They could bring in not. Well, I suppose maybe COVID level kind of controls, but
Right.
yeah, I don't know exactly what they would do. Maybe something like that. But I just think they don't care. I think they'll make it a battleground. And what do you say?
Did you see this? He said something about Canada's a crisis now. State of crisis in Canada has the ability through extraordinary powers to manage the crisis Donald Trump caused. Is this basically what you're referring to? Possibly.
Yeah, I think they'll go into those kind of very authoritarian kind of policies. And then once you're in that setup, who knows they can do that? They can take over companies because there is still a lot of integration between Canada and the U.S. I don't think Trump wants to just break it off, but they could do things where it breaks it off, which would be a problem.
All right. So the other thing you mentioned, basically everybody steals ideas from the People's Party when the Overton window moves over, and I'm familiar with that. I don't have to like it, but I see it.
Yeah.
But looking at what Carney's doing with Pierre, in some ways he's like kneecapping him, in other ways he's boxing him in. So with Lord brain fart, what was I going to say? Moving to the right of the Conservative Party fiscally, that kind of kneecaps Pierre Poilievre. Starting this war, this patriotic war against Trump, so it's us Canadians against Trump, that boxes Pierre in, like he can't drift more to the right. Do you get the sense that he's outmaneuvering Pierre?
It's pretty easy to outmaneuver Pierre. Like the problem with Pierre is I don't know what he stands for. He's not anything. Like I have the most fun making Pierre videos because he is Millhouse, and they tried to rebrand him, and I don't know. I don't think people buy it. I think people really didn't like Justin, and I think a lot of people were like, okay, not him, not Justin. I'll deal with whatever Pierre is. But now that Justin may be out of the picture, I don't know. I don't know how believable Pierre is. I don't think people. I don't think people know who Pierre is. But Mark Carney is, he's more intelligent. Like I said, he's a final level boss. Like he will be able to outmaneuver, and I think he is boxing him in. That happened in the UK. So Starmer kind of boxed in the Conservatives by going right of the Conservatives on immigration. So yeah,
I wasn't following. Yeah, I wasn't following that. Sorry.
Also Starmer. So the UK um, prime minister. This is probably, I don't think, early December. They moved to the right of the UK Conservatives on immigration, and basically came out and had a press conference where they said uh, the whole mass immigration was done on purpose by the Conservatives. Just basically, they, they they couldn't say anything, and then they just put in that new leader, and she was one of the ones that was part of it. So yeah, I think they can do something very similar to Polyev, and it's easy to do because I don't know what he stands for.
So you sometimes watch our Friday show, Cerberus at the Improv, with Timothy Knight and Andre
Yep,
Maloche.
yep.
Those two, very smart guys, entitled to their opinion, probably watching the show right now. They're of the opinion that uh, it's a foregone conclusion that Pierre Polyev will win. I still think he's got a pretty good chance. People are pissed off, but I see a path to success for Carney because essentially Trudeau's gone, like you said.
Yeah, I had bets. I'll lose a lot of bets because I put bets from about 2 years ago saying that Polyev was going to be next PM, and everyone's like, "No way, there's never going to be another conservative government." I'm like, I don't, I think you're wrong, but you're right. Yeah, I don't know. Depends how long they can stretch this out. If they can stretch it out, until November or the the next election, I think that he can get a lot done in that time. And like I say, Pierre is not he's not a great politician, and he's not really that believable. So I can see Carney if he's in, or if, I think probably only Carney can do it. I think he's going to be in. Um, he wouldn't be here unless it was set up for him to be here. Like he's not going to waste his time running. And I don't necessarily believe that these parties leadership votes are completely honest. So who knows? I think they're going to put him in. They're going to make it seem like that there's other people running, but I don't know. I'm not convinced. Now they could also, who knows what happens if Trump actually does end up putting these tariffs in, whether they're the 25% or something less than that. That could create the crisis as he's talking. He's saying crisis. He's saying these things because I think he's setting up for something like that. Um, and in a crisis or in an emergency, yeah, there may not be an election in November. They could easily push it out. So
Mind you, you're talking November 2026.
that one election is 26.
Well, that's the limit. Remember, we have 5-year
The
terms.
limit.
We just
Oh
by
yeah,
convention we stick to
right,
four,
right,
but they
right.
can really push
I
this up.
yeah. I was talking like if everything's normal election, but yeah, maybe even that point, I wouldn't be that surprised. I think they could easily skip the one this year with
I
some
think
kind of
they can
emergency.
now. Yeah, like
Yeah, I
like
think
a couple of things happened when they parachuted Mark Carney in. Uh, First of all, I saw like overnight social media influencers popped up online, and it was very sophisticated. And the word I always use is Perkins Coie, Mark Elias, Fusion GPS. Like these
right.
billionaire bankers, they must have gone to the U.S. They're like these Canadians. They don't know what they're doing. Let's just take over this campaign. And then you had man, I forget the name. You had the white leadership, the guy for the leadership, the white guy. I forget his name. The one who said we should put a full moratorium on immigration. I'm like, that doesn't sound like a liberal leader.
Oh, that right, right, yeah, yeah.
And then the Indian lady that also wanted to apply for it, and she said we need to deport all illegals. I'm like, this sounds just like they're just fundraising for the party, and while they're undermining Pierre Poilievre, like it didn't seem organic.
Oh yeah, I don't think any of it is. Um, and yeah, of course, like I said, I think they're going to make Canada battleground, and bringing him in and extending potentially the election and keeping it in a lot longer. I think they can do it. I think they might plan to do that. Because again, like Pierre, he's just, I think he's in their group, but he's not at that level. Like he's not at Carney level, and I think they're going to need some pretty sophisticated planning to deal with Trump and all that group and what they're planning on doing.
Yeah, I
But
can't really get a read on Pierre. I don't know. I don't know if he's a puppet. I don't know if he's sort of in training or if he's actually a populist. All I know is that it's very, if somebody believes that our way to salvation is through the Conservative Party, nothing I say can change their mind.
Well, they've been put through some pretty hard times here, so like they've been beat down for 5 years at least. Um, I sympathize with the people who just. I hope it's him. I hope he can do it, but I don't know. He's just a government man. Like he's been in there so long. Like he's a part of that. He, uh, I'm sure he knows what to say. He's getting told what to say, which is pretty easy because the problems were so obvious and so big that it's not really that hard to create a script that people are like, oh yes, he's talking to me. So, but I've never really believed him. Like even when he has the sit downs, I don't. I feel that he could say something and he'll be a completely different person tomorrow, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, I say he's a chameleon, but I noticed this too. So I originally, during the leadership race, whatever it was, 2 years ago, I donated the full 1,000, I think it was 695 or something at the time, to Roman Bobber. I really wanted him in. On the ranked choice ballot, I put Roman number one, Leslyn Lewis number two, and I didn't vote for Pierre because Pierre did two rallies here, one in Burnaby, one in Langley, and I went to them, and he specifically catered the message. So Langley, you got like the gun-toting crowd, so he emphasized gun rights, whereas Burnaby, he was talking about like Bitcoin and crypto. But either way, it looked like he was reading off a teleprompter, and I'm like, I don't trust this guy.
Yeah, I don't know. He's gotten better, but he wasn't that good in those leadership debates. He's not quick on his feet and I think he's not quick on his feet because he doesn't actually have any core things he believes in. I don't think he actually does have a plan. Like if he sat down and had a proper 3 hour conversation with somebody discussing his idea, I don't think he could do it. I don't know what it'd be. So yeah, I could see him catering his message. I went to one when he was here. I don't know. It seemed kind of it's very basic. Um, uh, we'll end the carbon tax. We'll stop Justin. We'll stop this kind of stuff. But again, it's hollow because ending the carbon tax doesn't actually stop anything, right? Like, you have to leave all these organizations, otherwise you can't get out of it. You Canada does have commitments to these things. They have a Paris Accord um, commitments if they're going to stick with that. And he never actually gets into why you should end the carbon tax. Like everyone, the propaganda on climate change is strong. It was impressive. If you just say, I'm going to end this thing without explaining that that thing wasn't something you should be concerned about, then these people, I don't know who's going to, it's hard to trust that person, right? Like they're just taking something away without giving you a new plan. But what he should be doing is explaining that the plan was a lie, and this is why it's a lie. And this happened in the
Like,
U.S. There's a lot of good people that have been doing this for a long time in the U.S. They've been building that narrative as to why it's a lie, not that we just need to remove the carbon tax.
so I'll just say one last thing. I don't want the audience to think that I'm just, because I'm a PPC candidate, I'm beating on Pierre Poilievre. Uh, like every other party, they stand for something. So the PPC, whatever, they're sovereigntists. The NDP, they stand for maximum equity, i.e., communism. The Liberal Party, they're progressive. They stand for the whole woke thing. But the
They were supposed to be
Conservative
the
Party,
centrists.
well, yeah, I know, but I'm talking about what they are, right? Like their
Yeah.
messaging, the branding, what they put out, and you can feel it. You might not be able to define it, but you can feel what they stand for. The Conservative Party, I've just been spending the last 2 years like doing somber walks in the park, pondering on what they stand for, and it's really just slightly lower taxes, not the Liberals. Like they don't have leadership, they don't have vision. That's another issue.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to agree with most of the ideology of your opponent, but just say that they're wrong because they never attack they've attacked the ideology. He's gotten a little bit better with some of it, but yeah, they haven't really done that as far as I can see.
So I guess we should stop beating them up. You mentioned the U.S. and how they're doing some stuff with climate change, educating. Tom Luongo, who was on yesterday, he pointed out that Mike Benz basically is the guy that the Trump administration puts out in front to educate the people, sort of prepare them for the policies that they're rolling out. And something beautiful happened in the US from 2020 to 2024, where all the independent podcasters, they got behind the MAGA movement and they started educating people. And I guess Mike Benz is a big part of that. I'd really like to see that in Canada, where populism does that, spearheads that, instead of what appears to be happening with the Mark Carney campaign, is that the globalists start doing that.
Yeah, Mike Benz is interesting. It was he went from like 0 to 60 in no time. But it's good. It is. He was very obviously putting out propaganda for that team early, because he was traveling to all these places. He was in these countries at very specific times when things were happening all over Europe. He was doing more things than just making videos and playing his piano for people. It was a very well thought out campaign. Like what he was doing was really thought out. The team must have been quite big, actually, because they were all over the place. I don't know. I don't see any of that in Canada. I don't know who it would be, because we don't really have that movement, I don't think, in Canada that's backed by any kind of money, any kind of support.
Sorry about that. I can think of some people that could do it. So if they got their act together, Marty up north, he's very clever. Buck McYoung, he's very clever. And they would have to partner with distributors like Clyde Do Something. My concern is that probably the Conservative Party's already gone out and co-opted these guys, if not the Carney campaign.
Well, Marty blocked me because I said he was working for the CPC campaign, or the Conservative campaign, in the last election, because I know he was. So he blocked me. So I'm fairly certain that he's taking money from them. And
yeah, I'm trying not to piss these people off because I'm just one person. I don't want to have like angry influencers coming at me, but there are a lot of smart people. It's like herding cats. I try to get people on my show and try to get them all together, and then Mr. Smith finds out I talked to Mr. Johnson, and he's like, "How dare you? I'm not coming back." Like, we can't win a war like this, guys.
Yeah. The problem is, like, with the Clyde do somethings, and what's that other guy? That's a ridiculous name, Mr. Sunshine something, Mr. Sunshine
Sounds
Baby.
familiar. Yeah.
I have no idea how that he gets like 75,000 people watching his videos. I have no idea how that happened. Those people he must be getting some kind of support, but that's just easy money. I think if you want to be popular, you go with the larger audiences, right? So it has to be someone who doesn't want to make money off being a podcast, doesn't want to make money off doing that. And I don't know. I haven't seen anybody that's been doing that. I think you've been doing a good job. I will say you've been doing a great job with it, but most of the stuff I watch is in the US or UK, right? Because honestly, that's just where most of the movements, or the better thinkers who are thinking kind of how to change the system, different philosophies, different economic systems. So they're all in the US.
Americans are somehow they're more professional. I compare it to like the military. So I have a security background. When you work in security, you get a mission. I mean, I'm not a military guy, but you get a mission, and your whole job is to accomplish that mission. The ego doesn't come into it. Whereas in Canada, at least in these volunteer movements, you're stepping on people's toes. Someone's feelings get hurt. People, they don't agree with you, so they throw a hissy fit. That doesn't happen in the US. Like, they have more grit and they're tougher.
Oh, 100%. I'm blocked by people because I try to be very polite. Like, I may disagree with them and I may have a counterpoint, but I try to do it in a polite way. But yeah, I'm blocked by pretty much all the main if you want to call them kind of smaller Canadian influence accounts like Marty and those people, um, they just instantly, yeah, they'll block and they'll not want to talk to you pretty quick. Where the U.S., I don't see that. I see them actually go after each other, and then they keep it open and they go back and forth, and it's they'll even have them on their podcasts to kind of debate the idea. Right, there's not really many in Canada where I see where it's the two sides, and even within the right, for example, like they'll have certain groups that are on one that have one idea on the right, and others have a different plan, but they're still kind of more on the right, and they have great debates, and they're fantastic to watch. But I haven't found too many in Canada where they do that.
Yeah, it's a shame. Maybe Canada's sort of progression is still in its infancy. I tell people in the U.S. they had the Reagan Revolution, the Ron Paul Revolution, the Tea Party movement, and then you had the Trump 2016, and then finally you got the precinct strategy. So it took them a while.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
Did you want me?
Self-government.
Did you want me to
Yeah.
talk about the COVID liquidity crisis that he was trying to get at? It should be pretty quick.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead if you have time. That and the euro dollar and whatever the hell's going on there.
Yeah, it's all kind of the same thing. So what he was saying, he was talking. He likes to talk about Jamie Dimon, and it's funny how he gets very aggressive about that. And I've seen him get very angry when people speak against him. Now, I agree. Jamie Dimon isn't the super bad guy. I think he was pretty crucial in bringing Trump, this group, into power right now, but purely because he's incentivized to do it, not because I don't think he's like a good guy or on our side. But so essentially what happened is it was the end of August 2019. Yeah, he's an interesting character. So it was end of August 2019, but they call it the September reverse repo crisis.
Yep.
So essentially so what happens? What happened to the banks, whether it's like a U.S. bank or like a Canada bank or a European bank, is they have to have the collateral to put out loans, and the best collateral is U.S. Treasuries. So they need these U.S. Treasuries. So they take the one U.S. Treasury and they'll put a loan out 9 to 10 times, sometimes higher in the derivative markets, but generally it's just say it's like a 10x. So if they have $1 million, about $10 million in loans, but there wasn't enough of those U.S. Treasuries, and you saw in kind of early or late January. I think oil went down negative, and then the market crashed. End of March, April, around there. It's because the U.S. government went to defend the debt market completely. So the euro bonds are just money that it's U.S. dollars that are created outside of the U.S. So if you're a bank in Switzerland, you buy U.S. Treasury and you make a U.S. dollar loan. But you're not connected to the Fed. They're just making up U.S. dollars. So it's like just a separate U.S. It's U.S. currency. These loans are U.S. and someone could take that money and move it into the U.S. But it's not money that's actually created through the Federal Reserve or into the U.S. banks. So that's what and it's called the euro dollar because it was started in Europe after World War II. But I think that was the reason. That was the reason why you had COVID. So that was breaking the whole global financial system was breaking, and they had to spend money. So you saw with COVID, like the amount of money that they put out. So in the U.S., it was like $4 trillion. So that's a lot of treasuries, and they needed all those treasuries so they can keep all these loans and that kind of and the Eurodollar system going. Canada did it, but not a lot of people are going to buy the Canadian bonds or UK bonds. So we just had really bad inflation. And then they had to have the lockdowns and the restriction on what you could buy. Because there's so much money to put into the system. If they didn't lock you down or restrict what you could buy, you could have hyperinflation pretty easily. So the lockdown, the not buying kids' toys, I think it was all to save the global financial system. And they were planning to build back better, which was like a coordinated global sovereign debt default to a reset of a new monetary system, which is why you have the central bank digital currency conversation going on. But I think the sovereigntists in the US said no, and they pulled out because the whole central bank digital currency would make all these big banks irrelevant. I remember watching George Gammon. Have you ever watched George Gammon's videos? he does like kind of financial. He kind of gets into the bones of the financial system. They're very good videos, but he was getting into that probably 2020, and I'm like, well, so J.P. Morgan's going to go away. Like, what deal are they giving all these powerful banks to just make them go away? So I always thought there was a big question mark there, and then when it just stopped, and I'm seeing, right now with that percent saying no, we don't need a central bank digital currency. I'm pretty sure that it was certain banks within the U.S. that said no, we're not going along with that plan. So I think COVID was a big part of that, was just to keep the financial system going, along with trying to put the U.S. more into debt, as kind of Tom said. And then they definitely wanted to test. They wanted to test these mRNA vaccines that they haven't been able to get them through any kind of animal trials. So they wanted to get them out. And for being honest, if you look at Canada or look at some of these countries that have these baby boomers that are now taking from the system instead of putting into the system, they have a problem there. So they wanted to solve a budget problem, I think, in a really horrible way. So they were fine. They were fine with, we don't know if it's going to be risky or not, which is a bit of an unfortunate thing.
So I have to go soon. I have another interview after this, but one thing I said to Tom yesterday, and I think I made him very uncomfortable in suggesting this. You mentioned that the central banks, they basically they underestimated how much the commercial banks would team up against them.
Yep.
Nothing is going to stop the City of London from regrouping and coming up with a new strategy of unveiling the CBDC. And I kind of said, well, Trump's got the CIA, he's got the military. What's to stop him to extrajudicially killing a couple of these bankers in Europe to send the message? Otherwise, these guys, they're relentless. They'll never stop coming at him.
I don't think they care if they do it in Europe, and they very well might do it in Europe. I think the UK and the euro are ripe for a sovereign debt default rate very, very soon. So that you might see it in Europe, and you might not see it in the US. You might see it in Canada. You might see it in other countries, but I don't I don't know if they're gonna go after them. It's a lot of people, right? It's not like you can just kill. It's not like a single person. I don't know if they would go that route.
I don't know if you get what I'm saying though. Like if every banker in the City of London, they just happen to their planes explode in the air, they might think twice about doing this to the U.S. again.
Yeah. Hey, we can hope, right?
There's no blood on my hands. I'm not the one at the CIA.
Yeah. I was just going to say, when you try to, the problem is when you try to kill if you're trying to do something like that to these people, you better not miss. Like the problem is when the people have these kind of, they have access to those kind of finances, you better not miss, and you better be able to cover up who it was. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they go to that extent. I think they can. I think they can remove some of the power from them. I think that's what they're doing. They're pulling out of Europe, and I think it's going to be they're going to have hard times over there if they do that. Like they're still pulling gold out of England right now. Like the J.P. Morgan is breaking records as far as pulling out or asking for delivery of their gold. So they're pulling it from Europe into the U.S. in preparation for something.
Did you watch the gold markets? The price of gold the last 24 hours?
Yeah. I think it's at 28 or something.
It's almost 29 now. Yeah. I like to always keep an eye on the price of gold so that when I'm losing an argument, I just talk about the price of gold and people are like, wow, this guy's smart.
But with the fact that they're requesting physical delivery and they're not able to they couldn't do it, so they had to go to the Bank of England to try to get their supply, and it's last I saw was like an 8-9 week delay, which is a long time for that. That's a sign of something going on.
Well, they're definitely they can't get any gold out of Canada. Trudeau and Harper sold it all.
Yeah, we have lots in the ground though. Like if you want to get it out, you can get it out. You just have to nationalize the mines. And I've said I wouldn't be that surprised if they did that. If there was a need for it and they felt they need to build that up. I could see them doing something like that.
I hate that word. Let's end it on that term. On that
Yeah,
note, I will bring you back on. I really enjoyed this conversation. I don't know, bring you back on in a couple of
yeah,
weeks.
it's
And when
great.
Canada's, if it's still a nation, we'll have another chat.
I think it'll be a nation, but who knows? I think there's a good for the first time. I think there's a good shot that there could be a major change within Canada within this year. Because I'm pretty sure that if the U.S. wants, if they want to secure, um, they want to control the energy, and I think they do need that. I really think they're making a play for Alberta. I really do, and they can probably do it. So who knows? There could be a pretty big change. You might be on the the outside wing, like in Alaska.
Yeah. After this, you and I might be enemies. You guys decide to go the liberty route, and we stay the communism route.
Especially in BC. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Have a good day, buddy. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.